Hello everyone, and on this video we're going to be looking at the World Wrestling Federation. Yes, that is right, the World Wrestling Federation. Before they were the WWE, they were the World Wrestling Federation.
You mean back when they were good?
Back when they were good, yes.
Oh,
back
okay.
I did not say that. Rodney said that. Sent all cards and letters directly to Rodney West in care of.
You can send them all, and I'll still keep saying the same thing.
1984 was a very interesting year for the World Wrestling Federation. They start out kind of taking over the TBS time slot in 1984. They end up developing some great television programs for TBS. Would y'all agree with that?
These were all used with people with that has sleeping disorders, especially this one off of TBS. So if there was anybody that had insomnia, they would always play these, and they still do to this day, I believe.
One of the big things they did in 1984 was Cyndi Lauper, Lou Albano, and Roddy Piper on December 28th at Madison Square Garden. I believe maybe Dick Clark was in on this as well, if I remember. Was it Dick Clark in the ring during this deal where Roddy Piper hits
Yes.
Lou Albano?
Yes, because Piper says in an interview after that, he said he even had Dick Clark. He was scurrying off. He was cowering in the corner.
Let me ask you this question. This was a great. Everybody talks about Hulk Hogan being the big part of WWF becoming a major issue, and I'll ask you this, Jack: wasn't Roddy Piper as big of a part of that as Hulk Hogan?
I think Roddy Piper was the biggest part of that. I don't believe Hogan would have ever achieved that initial level, that the WWE would never have gotten to that top level without the tremendous heat that Roddy Piper drew. You know, he was the key to all of this.
What about you, Rodney?
Yeah. Piper actually was the star. He was the equal to Hogan, and without Piper, I agree with Jack. This thing would not have gotten over. I don't see anybody else that was on the crew at that time. Not David Schultz, Paul Orndorff. No one could have done what Piper did in this. Nobody.
Let me ask you this question: how important was MTV, Jack, to the success?
Well, it was huge. MTV was a huge deal back then. They were new, they were exciting, and that is where you hit the pulse of that younger generation. Those young people who were at best casual wrestling fans, and some majority of them probably never watched wrestling at all. But once you involve that genre of where they wanted to see things, then it became something huge, and that's why the next year WrestleMania was such a big deal.
Because you think about it, they did the War to Settle the Score, which I believe might have been the first one they did, that had Cyndi Lauper, Wendy Richter, and Fabulous Moolah. And I think Wendy Richter won the title from Fabulous Moolah. That was a huge deal for
Yep.
that, because Moolah had been the champion for 203 years. So it was it was a big deal for them. Something else that happened in 1984, it involved Sergeant Slaughter. During this time, Sergeant Slaughter had a bunch of Cobra Core merchandise. They were selling Cobra Core merchandise in the WWE or WWF at the time. And evidently, Sergeant Slaughter was not getting his fair share of the money. Do y'all remember this happening with Sergeant Slaughter?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think Sergeant Slaughter was wrong in wanting his fair share of that merchandise?
No, because none of this would have been possible, this deal between the two companies, if it hadn't been for Sergeant Slaughter. He was the key, for bringing them in and doing the whole thing.
Yeah. What about you, Rodney? Was he being unreasonable to Vince McMahon? Because what he was telling them, he wanted a major part of the 7 years that was sold part of the corporate of the Cobra Corps. And I guess at the same time he was part of the G.I. Joe franchise as well. So,
Yep.
Was that unreasonable of Slaughter?
It would depend on what the deals were with other wrestlers. So if Hogan would have had a bigger share of his, then Sergeant Slaughter deserved the exact same amount. So of course I'm not privy to that information. So I would say that if Hogan or whoever else was there at the time and they were selling merchandise, if they were getting a certain percentage, then Sergeant Slaughter was entitled to the same thing. But if he was demanding more, then no, he deserved no more than what anybody else would get.
Well, now he ends up trying to get Jim Crockett to come to some agreement with it. So evidently, the merchandise that he had was his merchandise. And so Jim Crockett told him no. I believe Vern Gagne, he may have made. Did he leave WWF and go work for Vern Gagne?
He did.
But did it work for him as well as maybe if he took a smaller percentage in WWF?
Well, yeah, who's to know what the bottom line is really of what that brought in, but he got a bigger cut, which is what he wanted. So and I think really in the long run, he proved to Vince that he was willing to stand up to it. I believe when they worked things out that he did get that bigger cut that he was looking for.
What do you think, Rodney? You
never leave over gimmick sales.
This is true, but I don't know how much it was. We don't know how much it was. So, but let me
you never leave over gimmick sales.
Let me read something that was on the Wrestling Observer during this time period. It said the latest reports coming my way are that Slaughter may make a deal with Gagne, or he'll possibly be returning to the WWF. After all, Slaughter hasn't appeared on any shows since the first week of December and naturally left a slew of no-shows in his way. The Slaughter Titan conversation probably took place on and around December 9th because the show was held that afternoon in Toronto and Slaughter was seen at the building. However, Hulk Hogan, not booked on the card, replaced Sarge in his match against Nikolai Volkov. For WWF to have gotten Hulk into town that day, they must have known in advance that Slaughter was unavailable for combat, or would be by chance he was fired that day. So, did he get fired or did he quit? Has anybody heard a story?
What he was told is very simple. You can either wrestle or you don't, and either way, we don't care.
Possibly that's what he was told. All right,
because in all honesty, just be point blank and to the point. Without Vince, Slaughter would not be in the position that he was to make these demands. It's just as simple as that. He couldn't do this. He wouldn't have done it to Jim Crockett because Jim Crockett, what did he tell him? No.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have done it. He just wouldn't have done it. And, in the end, though, I believe it cost him.
This was going on in 1984. There's always something going on. We talk about now we're in 2020 at the time of this recording, and stuff that was going on now, same thing was going on in 1984. Nothing is really different. Now we got to talk about, everybody will talk about WWF and how well they drew against the territories at the time. WWF did really good, but in Atlanta, Georgia, on the 25th, they ran December 25th, 1984, and they drew 5,500 fans in the Omni. Now, they did a Thanksgiving card called the Turkey Battle Royal, which I heard did very bad in most towns. But I think, did somebody get tar and feathers of that, or did they have to wear a
turkey suit? They have to wear a turkey suit.
Turkey suit, yeah.
It's basically, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's a cage escape match. And I believe in Atlanta, the Sheik was the one left wearing the turkey suit.
I think you are right. Now, they drew 7,000 people for that. So they dropped money big time. So the card must have been really horrible for it to drop to 5,500 fans on Christmas night, which on all occasions, Christmas night would sell out for the territory.
Yes.
Now, let's remember, and Thanksgiving would have sold out. Now, this was the thing. This is also the thing. Ole Anderson. Wait a minute. Now, I was wrong about that. They only drew 4,800 people for that show. It was Ole Anderson's show the same time that drew 7,000. So, they did come up a little bit, so maybe people like to here's the St. Louis show. And on 12/27 drew 9,490 people, as per a newspaper report, and a ringside view said the number looked very accurate. So that they said it. Tickets at Madison Square Garden was a hot commodity at this time, and the second straight sellout was expected. I think due in part by Hulk Hogan. Wouldn't you think so? And Roddy Piper?
Yep.
Because I think that was during the same night saw Titans Texas tour begin with a crowd of 2,800 people in the Summit.
Yeah, they were burning it up in Houston.
But again, that was because that was the Mid-South wrestling territory.
Right.
Yeah, Paul Bosch.
It would be very hard to beat them.
Now, are they running head to head in those markets as well with the local promotion? Are they running head to head in those?
Yes, they were. The same Houston, as compared with Bill Watts' crowd of 10,000 at the Houston Coliseum the same night. Jack, what was you going to say?
Back then, WWF shows compared to the local show, there was no comparison. Local shows normally just blew them out of the water as far as the entertainment value in the matches themselves. They just blew them out of the water.
Well, if they wanted to draw against Mid-South, they should have made Bill mad, and he would have talked about them in a whole episode.
That's right.
Would have plugged them heavily.
Or something, yeah.
Yeah.
They returned to Oklahoma City, where they were a debut and draw, and they drew a gate of 1,500 people in Oklahoma City. $11,000 gate. But Bill Watts had a free show that night and had 10,000 fans, turning several thousand more away, many of whom were in the wrestling mood and went over to the WWF.
Next thing you'll do is you'll learn to sell those tickets instead.
Now remember, now this is the clincher of this. Actually, Watts' show was more of an autograph party than any matches. There were no matches on that. They just had all they had Jim Duggan, the Rock and Roll Express, and Kerry Von Erich.
We covered that in one of our Mid-South shows, probably about 3 shows back. We covered that because that was what he was talking about during a very important championship match on television. He decided to talk about Fan Fest that they had in one of the towns they had. They were only set up for 2,500, but they ended up having 12.
But I think this shows, don't y'all think this shows that WWF, it took them a long time to beat the territories. They would still do well in their own, but when they were trying to run against the territories, it took them to WrestleMania 3.
WrestleMania 3 in its production was far and above the greatest marketing that they've ever done. And it took years to get there, but they had the key match of Hulk Hogan against Andre the Giant, which was a match made over, the years, many, many years. And they were ready.
Well, and you're also looking at, this was a time period when the territory started imploding by the fact that they refused to update their business practices too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
there was a lot of keys to why WWE started pulling out ahead, and it wasn't all just because WWE was a better product. It was because the competition was losing its grip too.
Right, and a lot of the talent was staying way too long, and then there was not this exchange of talent, and then you had some promoters that we won't mention that began to do the same exact thing that Vince had done. Going in after years and years of talking about the NWA, and then next thing you know, the very thing you spent 30 years building up was running against you across the town in the opposite building. So,
right,
yeah,
it was some bad things during that time. We'll talk more about it on other episodes, but I wanted to talk about the World Wrestling Federation and exactly just a little bit of the stuff that was going on. A whole lot better time, and some good stuff by the WWF from 1984, and some bad things as well. The TBS show was one of them. Jack, thank you so much. Rodney, thank you so much. If you're watching us, give us the big thumbs up. and subscribe to the channel, and go one step further, hit that notification bell. And we'll be talking about more of World Wrestling Federation on future videos. We thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next video right here on Pro Wrestling Inside Now.